leather boots on courtroom floors, 26 years behind closed doors, files marked confidential, truth suppressed, but I write in with justice on my chest. From crime scene to courtroom, I've seen it all. I say my piece and wait for the judge's gavel to fall. Every child matters, no case too small. I feel their pain and hear their frightened call. A voice for the voiceless, I won't let go. I speak the truth, they need to know. This is crime, courtroom confidential. Silence breaks and hearts are hurt. We fight for the ones the system never saw. Every story, every word, no secrets buried, no pain ignored. Justice rides in bold and raw. This is truth, unfiltered, and I'm not backing off. My hair hums beneath the sky, courtroom robe and a watchful eye. Tattoos tell stories, scars that stay. I've lived alone in every way. From crime scene to courtroom, I've seen it all. I say my piece and wait for the judge's gavel to fall. Every child matters, no case too small. I feel their pain and their frightened call. A voice for the voiceless, I won't let go. I speak the truth, they need to know. This is crime, courtroom confidential, where silence breaks and hearts are hurt. We fight for the ones the system never saw. Every story, every word, no secrets buried, no pain ignored. Justice rides in bold and raw. This is truth, unfiltered, and I'm not backing off. Pansy by my side, honey in the field. I carry the weight that others conceal. Behind the bench, behind the fear, I've held the line year after year. Not just facts, but human lives. We investigate and dig where darkness resides. Every case, a sacred vow to find the truth, starting now. This is crime, courtroom confidential, where silence breaks and hearts are hurt. From crime scene to courtroom, we stand tall. Every child matters, go and stay true. Never gain, leave you stand. Your leverage, no answer in found. Every story unfiltered, and I'm not backing off. A voice for the voiceless, truth on the line. We seek justice and keep evil confined. This is true, unfiltered, and I'm not backing off.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Crime Courtroom Confidential. I am Bev. I am a Crown Prosecutor in the United Kingdom. I also have experience as a defence advocate and also as a child protection lawyer. So I like to try on this channel and share a little bit of my experience to look at cases, particularly involving children, domestic violence, infanticide, and so on. And today I want to talk about Jack and Lilly Sullivan. Now, as a very brief reminder, Jack and Lilly went missing on the 2nd of May of this year, 2025. We're now on the 16th of September, 2025. So it's well over 4 months ago that these two children disappeared. Lilly and Jack are siblings. Lilly is 6 and Jack is 4. And they went missing from their home on Gairloch Road in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. And very recently, some court documents came out which really don't provide any evidence in the case at all. But what they do is take us through the RCMP investigation, because what they actually are, these documents, is applications for the disclosure of various records. And we talked a little bit about how and why they can make those records requests under the Missing Persons Act in a previous video, which was entitled Legal Questions Answered. Okay, so if you've got any questions about the legalities of it, about what information might be redacted in court documents when they disclose them to the public, then have a look at that video, because I set that all out in there. But just suffice to say, for the time being, information is only redacted in documents for very specific purposes. In these particular documents, they are redacted either because they are personal information, which we all have the right to privacy about our specific information around health, ethnicity, all the protected characteristics that we have. They also have redacted information due to delayed disclosure. Now, that is usually because to release that information at this time would harm their investigation. So usually it is information where either there are inconsistencies between what different people involved say, and so they don't want to let the other person know what the opposing person has said, because then they could match up their information. Or alternatively, it could be that it provides information about the types of investigative techniques that are being used, or simply it could be they don't want anybody to know what that information is specifically for some reason or other, because it would harm what they are trying to achieve by releasing that information. And the final reason that they've redacted information is because it is privileged. Now, there are two types of privilege. There is client-lawyer privilege, which means that any communication between a client and their lawyer is subject to complete privilege unless it is waived by the privileged party, i.e. the client. Now, I don't think that's the reason here. I suspect that it is litigation privilege, which is that any document that is produced with the intention of it being used in later court proceedings can be subject to litigation privilege, so they can refuse to disclose that. So we know that either it's information that is personal that shouldn't be disclosed to the general public, information that could harm the investigation, not that it's unfounded. If it was unfounded, no harm, no foul in releasing it, frankly. And that they are intending to use it in potential later litigation. That tells us something. It tells us that at the moment they are still very much in the frame of mind that there may later be a prosecution of some kind. So I'll leave it there from that point of view, but what I've done is what I do in any case, which is I create a timeline of whatever it is I'm looking at. So that's my first step, and then I'll break it down into various ways that we analyse material. But the first step is I always want to know what the timeline is. These documents start as a very basic document, and as each document through the timeline is created, extra information is added. So by the time we get to the last document that was created, it's essentially the same as the first one, plus everything that has happened since. So bear that in mind. There is a lot of repetition in the documents. And so rather than reading the documents to you, which I think is frankly neither use nor ornament other than that it serves to satisfy people's curiosity, doesn't help us to analyse the case in any way. It would take forever and I'd be repeating myself over and over again. So what I've done is I've pulled out all of the information that is contained within those documents that sets out what the timeline is of what the RCMP have done in this case, what they have found, what they've sent for testing. As I said at the beginning, there is not really any evidence of substance contained in these documents, but we can glean some information from it. So I still want to go through it. A lot has been made of the fact that, certain people have been cleared. They haven't. The RCMP have not at any point said that any individual in this case is cleared. Just because they say in a document that somebody has demonstrated truthfulness in answering 4 specific questions in a polygraph examination, and that the purpose of that examination was to attempt to rule them out, does not mean that they have actually ruled them out, because it doesn't say that, and we can't infer things that are of such significance unless they specifically spell it out. What they say is actually to the direct contrary. What they say is, at the time that they were creating that particular document, there was no evidence available to them sufficient to create reasonable grounds to believe that a criminal offence has occurred. Doesn't say we don't believe a criminal offence has occurred. It doesn't say there's no evidence pointing in that direction. It says there's no evidence to meet the bar of reasonable grounds to believe that it did occur. Now, it also says that they remain in a position where they are keeping all options open. Everything is still on the table because they simply don't know what happened. Now, of course, this information is old because the last document isn't a recent document. So the last one created that we're going to look at isn't a recent document. So we don't know actually what they now have. We don't know what the outcome of any of the investigation testing is. So things could be completely different behind closed doors at this moment in time, and they're certainly not giving away anything of any substance. So the documents don't really take us a huge amount further forwards, and I think that they have been released in an attempt to demonstrate that they have done a lot to resolve this case. Now, what I will say is I'm a little bit critical of the RCMP and their investigation into this matter, but only in terms of the potential for there to have been foul play of some kind. In terms of their search efforts, on the basis that the children wandered away, I think they did a pretty damn fine job, actually. Albeit they weren't as organised as I would have liked to have seen. This is something out of the ordinary for that area. It's something that a small town is not going to deal with on a regular basis. So we can't expect them to be experts in dealing with this type of scenario. But they did a pretty extensive search. So let's start having a look at this set of information that we've pulled out. So you'll see that I've split it down into the date. Of course, that's the first part of a timeline. The time of day where we know it. A lot of the information just says the date, not a time. But there are some areas where they provide a time, so I've included it where I can. The investigative step that they took, and if we know it, what the result was, or certainly information about it. Okay, so I've included all of the information that they provide in those documents about that particular investigative step. So we know that on the 2nd of May 2025, at 10:01, a 911 call was received. Dispatch requested attendance at the scene. That was the very first step that RCMP took. At 10:27 a.m, so some 26 minutes later, RCMP officers arrived on the scene. Now, we know from some of the press releases that the RCMP did, that was because they were already in the area searching for kayakers who'd gone missing. Now, they included a lot of information about what the search efforts were on arrival. What they don't include, really, is any information about what they may have done to rule out the possibility of foul play at the beginning of this investigation. Okay, so on the 2nd of May, they arrive on scene and they commenced their search efforts. They had ground search and rescue, drones. The drones were up and out within a very short space of time. Helicopters were also deployed almost immediately. Dogs were brought to the scene. So we had a number of canine officers. There was certainly 2 teams. I think there was probably more, but on the audio from the dispatch, I can certainly identify that there was 2. 160 plus searchers. They went out to an 8.5 kilometre radius, not in a direct circle, actually. It was kind of favoured towards one side, so it was more like an egg. And I think that is because the family own more property in the direction that they searched. They went out to an 8.5 kilometre square area around the property. That took place between the 2nd and the 7th of May. On day 1, we know that they did hasty searches, linear features like streams, trails, train tracks and roadsides. and grid searches around where Lilly and Jack were last thought to have been seen, i.e. the family home. Mountain bike teams came in to do trail area searches. And we know that on that day, boot prints were found on the pipeline. It was actually Friday night into Saturday morning, so between the 2nd and the 3rd. And they were in clumps of 2 different sizes. One was small and corresponded to what the children would wear. Now, that phraseology sounds bizarre to me because it's not going to be the same size that both children wore. It turns out later in the documents that it was Lily's foot size that the boot prints matched. There weren't any in Jack's size, which leads me to believe that that's less likely to be them, because there would be both, surely, if they were both walking in that area. The other one was an adult size. So we also know, and they accept, that there were reports that family members or members of the public, I think it says actually, brought children to the search area. Why anybody would do that, completely beyond me. If it is someone close to the family, maybe that was to create some kind of distraction, who knows. I can't say one way or the other. What I can say is we can't say that that is the children, because it's not on their property. Anybody could be walking on that pipeline trail, and we know that certain people brought children to the area, or brought, I don't know how many people brought a child or more than one child, but it says there were reports that people brought children to the search area. So kind of throws doubt onto the fact that it's theirs. Almost every child will go through the phase where they're in a size 11. So a size of shoe doesn't lend me to believe that it's definitely Lily's. If we know that they did a cast of the footprint, now if they had compared that to the underside of the exact boot that we know that they went and purchased from Walmart, then you could say, well, that holds more weight because it matches the boot print pattern. But they didn't do that, or if they did, they're not telling us. Now, they also looked on that first day at swamps and waterways that were adjacent to the property. And they did grids between Lansdowne Road, Gairloch Road and Lansdowne Lake. That's about a 0.5 kilometre north of the residence. So we're looking at just north of the residence, they did a grid search in that area. So Lansdowne Lake, they also did a low altitude 360-degree scan of the lake and water's edges with one of the drones. They also looked with the drones at culverts under railway beds along Lansdowne Road between Gairloch Road and Montreal Road. So that's what it tells us about the day one searches. Doesn't say that they searched inside the property and whether that was RCMP or ground search and rescue people. It doesn't say whether they searched Janie's trailer, whether that was ground search and rescue or RCMP. Janie tells us the first day it was ground search and rescue. they're not looking for evidence. They're looking for live children that have wandered off. Have they gone and hidden? One would hope that somebody in all of that searching on day one did a sweep of both properties inside. But I can't guarantee it because it doesn't say it in the documents. Malehya made 2 statements on the 2nd of May. But we have a summary of statements 1 to 4. 3 and 4 came on a later date, but I've put the summary here because that made the most sense to me. So the summary of that set of statements is that she heard Jack and Lily playing in the other room and was going in and out of sleep. Lily came into the room around a redacted time frame a couple of times. Now, I believe that's redacted because Malehya and Daniel are not consistent between each other or between their own statements. You don't want to put something out there that they can pin their foot on in terms of, if they ask me again, this is what I'm saying. Okay? Daniel was asleep the whole time and didn't really wake up. And let me just say, feel free to screenshot this as we're going through it. Around redacted time, same reason I believe, she didn't hear them anymore, so she got up. They couldn't find them, so she called 911. Everything was frantic, searching for them. She didn't think it would take days. So that's obviously got to be one of the later days that she says that. So she says that on Monday and Tuesday, the children went to school. Wednesday was a professional development day, so they weren't in school, we know that. Thursday and Friday, she kept them home. And that Malehya doesn't recall what they did on Wednesday. So when she was first speaking to the RCMP, she couldn't tell them what she did on Wednesday, but she did give a detailed description about what happened on Thursday. And she says that at 6:18, she reported their absence to school via the app. She got up, headed out to get the kids breakfast. Doesn't say if she means to the kitchen or out of the home. 9 a.m, everyone woke up. Got the kids wanted TV, to watch TV and to play with their toys. She tidied the house throughout the day and looked after the children. Now, given what Belinda has said to us about the state of the property, I question whether she did in fact tidy the house throughout the day, but there you have it. She scrolled on her phone at one point because she was overstimulated. Now, I can relate to that, so I'm not going to say that there is anything wrong with taking a few minutes away from your children, as long as they are in a safe, secure place, to decompress if you're feeling overstimulated. It then says that there was a redacted appointment in New Glasgow in the afternoon on Thursday. So she and Daniel and all the kids went to that appointment in her 2017 Pathfinder, Nissan Pathfinder. Now, it redacts what the appointment was, but Malehya herself has told us that it was a bloods appointment. So I assume that that's what it was. They went to the big stop for gas, maybe to Tim Hortons for bagels for the kids. Now, how do you not know if you went to Tim Hortons? You're talking to them the day after. And this is the last day where you were together with your children. before they disappeared forever, or certainly for a significant period. So it would be ingrained in your mind. But in any event, if you ask me what I did yesterday, I might not be able to tell you the kind of fine details, but I'd be able to tell you if I went to Tim Hortons for bagels for the kids. I'd be able to tell you where I went for fast food. I'd be able to tell you if I went to the shops or if I had a specific appointment. Daniel and the kids stayed in the car while she went into her appointment, and they went to Starbucks drive-thru on the way home. Now, at this point in the statements made by Malehya, there is no mention of a trip to Dollarama or a trip to Lawton's. She tells them that she was tired in the evening, so didn't clean. She put Lilly and Jack to bed first at around 9 p.m, and they usually go around 7 p.m. She put Meadow to bed, and then she went to bed herself. Lilly was wearing a pink sweater, pink pajamas with white shapes, a Barbie top, pink socks. She has shoulder-length hair, and she had her backpack beside her. And Jack was wearing black sweatpants, t-shirt, diaper, as he was only partially trained. Now, I don't think it's fair to say that any child should be completely toilet trained by a given age, because children, they develop at different rates. And we know that these children had developmental delay. That being said, I will say this. Children in most parts of the world start school around 4 or preschool. The idea is that a parent should get their child what is called school ready. That means that they're used to being away from the parent for short periods, that they are able to use the toilet appropriately where at all possible, that they can put on and off very basic Velcro style shoes or boots. And they can put their own coat on, hang up their backpack, the things that they need to do when they go to school, and also sit on a carpet and listen to stories. Sit on your knee and listen to stories, whatever it may be. They need to be able to have built up that ability to concentrate on a story. Daniel Martell stayed up, according to Malehya. He was going to clean for her. But it wasn't clean when she got up, so she's got no idea what he did. And she goes on to tell them that he normally does little projects around the house at night and fixes things. And then there's a little bit where it says redacted personal information. That could be an explanation as to why he does things around the house at night. It could be an explanation about why she needed him to assist her with anything. We're never going to know. It's redacted for a reason. But I don't think it's particularly relevant to the case as a whole idea. Malehya says that she was not woken up through the night, and she doesn't know what time Daniel came to bed. Now, we know that that is inconsistent with what she later tells Lana King. And she tells her that she was awoken at about midnight and that Daniel was up all night doing his thing. Now, some might say, well, what's the relevance of whether Daniel came to bed or not, and whether she knows what time it was and whether she was woken up? Well, the relevance is, if she was awoken, it's more likely that she's got knowledge about whatever may have happened if something happened during the night. Also, if Daniel didn't come to bed at all, then what was he doing? It's an ideal time frame for something to happen and for him to hide the evidence while she's fast asleep. Now, we don't know whether she sleeps heavily, whether she sleeps lightly. We don't know whether she's taking medication to help her sleep that might make it more likely that she's not going to wake up when someone's doing something. But the fact that she provides Daniel with an alibi, albeit an inconsistent one, that leads me to believe that she's more likely to have knowledge of what happened than not if something did happen. We've always got to look at these things and think, well, what's more likely? That's not going to win you a criminal case, and it's not going to give them enough to bring criminal charges against anybody, because the standard of proof in criminal proceedings is that you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the offence occurred. But when we're looking at it as members of the public, we can ask that question. What's more likely when you take into account the various things that we know about any given element? Now, Malehya goes on in these statements to talk about Friday, and she says that at 6 a.m. the alarm went off, and at 6:15 there was a second alarm. And at that point, she reported the children absent to school via the app. She doesn't talk about checking that the children and seeing if they were still poorly. Literally just that she heard the alarm, reported them absent. So she'd obviously made the decision prior to that she was going to keep them off school on the Friday. Now, every day in a child's education matters. Every day absent matters. So if you keep a child off longer than when they are actually actively poorly, then you're not prioritising their education. And that's an element of neglect. She went back to sleep after she'd reported them absent. And she said she and Daniel were sleeping. There was no noise in the house. Daniel and Meadow were still sleeping and there was no noise in the house. So at that point, when she's going back to sleep, about 6:15, 6:20, no noise. And then a little bit later, she hears the kids playing in their bedroom around redacted time. Now it says redacted for delayed disclosure. The reason that you do that is because to release it might harm the investigation or the outcome of the investigation or proceedings. The children were playing in their room and they woke Meadow up. She brought Meadow into bed with her and turned on the TV to keep her quiet. And then she was fading in and out of sleep. The children were giggling, laughing and talking to each other, and their room is right next to Malehya and Daniel's bedroom. And she goes on to say, so they were loud. Would I use that phrase, which is a little bit critical sounding, when I'm talking about my children that have disappeared? Probably not. It's not the worst thing somebody's ever said. And then she goes on to say, around redacted time frame, she heard silence. And apparently I can't spell because I put head silence. I'll change that, shall I? So she hears silence. Now here, and what I don't like about this is that they're summarising, they're not quoting from the statement. So we don't know exactly what she said. Or any of them said, for that matter, because they only summarise things. But we've got what we've got, so we'll deal with it. Malehya told Daniel she didn't hear the kids. Now that's what she said in a TV interview. Absolutely not what Daniel said. Daniel said he told her that he couldn't hear the children. He was the one that woke up. She was still sparked out. He's the one that heard the silence. Now, they can't both be correct. And that's a really key element. As is who heard the children playing. Here she says that she's heard them. In a TV interview, she doesn't say that. Daniel says in his TV interviews, I heard Lilly. Malehya was still fast asleep. So there might be some things that you would be inconsistent about because they're inconsequential and you're not going to remember everything. But there are specific things that are the absolute crux of a case that you wouldn't be inconsistent about. You would know whether it was you that heard the silence and had to wake your partner up, or if it was them that woke you up and said they heard silence. Kids aren't there. So she wakes him up. She says, didn't hear the kids. And they both got up together. They checked the living room and outside. Now, they don't talk about their bedroom, the children's bedroom, the kitchen, Janie's trailer. These are all places that you would check before you dialed 911. They started yelling for them. He didn't hear any answer. She didn't hear any answer, so she called 911. She doesn't think the children changed their clothes from the previous night. And she knows from looking around that Lily's backpack was gone. It was cream, corduroy with strawberries on it, and that both Lilly and Jack's boots were gone. And at the time, she says, Lilly wears size 13. We know she was wrong. They were size 11. And it goes on to deal with that later in the document. And they were rainbow pink boots. And Jack was wearing size 10 blue dinosaur boots. Now, it doesn't go on later to say that they did any digging into what size his boots were, which is bizarre to me, but in any event. She then goes on to talk about a regular morning in their house, and she says that Lilly and Jack share a room, but they've divided it into two because they would be up all hours of the night when it was open concept. At 6:15, they usually get up. She gets the kids ready, fed, teeth brushed, and then at 7:28, the school bus arrives to collect them at the end of the driveway. Daniel's other children don't normally live with them. They stay with their mum. But they weren't there at all during the week that Lilly and Jack went missing. She also explains that Lilly and Jack had no relationship with their biological father and that they hadn't seen him since October of 2021 when Malehya left him because of redacted. Well, that'll be the reason for the breakup of the relationship. It doesn't say what provision it's redacted under, but I'm going to assume personal information. And she tells them that he did not pay child support. And then she goes on to talk about her relationship with Daniel, and she says that they've been together for 3 years. And then there's a very large redacted section. So we don't know exactly what she's told them about the state of their relationship. But she does go on to say that Daniel worked every Monday currently, that he helped his mother building the fence and bringing wood in when he wasn't in work because they use wood heat, and that he was an involved parent and would help her, especially when she was feeling overwhelmed. He wasn't aggressive to the kids, but they listened to his voice, and that neither of them ever used any physical discipline. Now, we know that that's inconsistent with what she said in messages to Sonny Austin, that it's a crime in shame, where she talks about the fact that Daniel would pick on Jack in particular, sometimes Lilly, and that he was controlling and coercive towards her, and that he's pushed her, held her down, taken her phone away, all of these things that a controlling spouse might do. On the Saturday, so after the children had gone missing, Malehya describes that she went to the police command post to see what was happening firsthand. Now, we know that they were doing a briefing for the parents, so that makes sense. And then there's 2 lines of redacted information, so we don't know what happened in that period before she left with her mother. I assume that in that redacted section, it's her explanation of what was the precursor to a leaving. She described that there was currently a lot of conflict between the Martell family and her family, and that Daniel's family wanted her to bring the baby and stay with them. We know that's Logan she's referencing, because Logan has come out and described that it was supposed to be her she was going with. And that she thought, Malehya thought, the correct decision was to stay with her own mother. Now, for me, that makes absolute, complete sense. If you're not going to stay at the property because whatever's redacted has happened, then in a time of such complete turmoil and something so significant happening, I would want to stay with my own mum, even as a grown-up, even now if she was still with me. If something really bad happened, I'd want to go and stay with her, not with one of Paul's family. There's then 4 lines that are redacted. So she clearly goes on to explain why she thought that. She did not know of any conflicts in their families' lives that would cause the children to go missing. And she's not spoken to Daniel since the 3rd of May when she blocked him, and she's not opened any of his Snapchat messages. Now remember, we're still on day 1, but she'd given 4 statements across a number of days, and they summarised them all together. They don't decipher what was included in day 1's statements and what was included in the later statements, which is infuriating, frankly. And what it tells me is they haven't, at the time that they're creating these documents, properly looked at what was consistent or not consistent between those 4 statements that she gave. And that's a basic. That's investigative 101. So it's concerning that they don't deal with that. Now, on day 1, Daniel gave 1 statement, and they summarised that. So he starts his statement not talking about the children going missing, how it made him distraught, what happened, what might have happened, any of that. He starts his statement with, Malehya took the baby and left with her family. That's the bit that he's bothered about. He couldn't give a flying hoot that Jack and Lily aren't there. He cares about whether Malehya left and took Meadow with her. He's bothered that Malehya left because he wanted to be in control of her, and he is bothered that she took Meadow because Meadow is his baby. So this concept of her having Jack and Lily moved and hidden to get them away makes no sense, because she could have just taken them, handed them over to a family member and told him she couldn't deal with them. It would be Meadow that he'd be bothered about her leaving with or sending somewhere else. And that comes out in this statement very, very clearly. So Malehya took the baby and left with her family. She blocked him, and he couldn't message her or contact her. He rarely uses or checks his phone, but he's done so more in the last 3 days since the kids were missing. He describes Thursday. The kids didn't go to school because Malehya thought Lily had a cough. Now, this is a strange phrase, because it's as though he's describing that she wasn't sick, but Malehya thought that she had some cough or other, but she didn't. Quite a bizarre way to phrase it. They all left home at lunchtime on Thursday. They got gas at Circle K in Alma. Now, Malehya says they got gas on Friday, I think. Can't find it now. No, it was Thursday, and it was Big Stop. Now, I don't know if that's the same thing, Big Stop and Circle K. Could be an inconsistency. It might not be. I don't know. They went to Tim Hortons drive-through for food, but thinks that Lily and Jack were sleeping at that point. They drove to Truro and went to Patty's to do laundry and spent most of the day there. Now, we know that this wasn't Thursday, it was Wednesday, and that later comes out. But when he first gives his statement, that's what he says. And again, I go back to the point, this was the last day that they were together all as a family before the children went missing. It would be ingrained in your mind what happened, where you went, what the children were doing, what the last thing they said to you was, all of those things. The fact that he can't get things straight between Wednesday and Thursday bothers me. So they went to Patty's to do the laundry, spent most of the day there. Then they went to shopping at Walmart and got food. And then there's some personal information that's redacted. And then it says 9:30 p.m. they left Patty's, 10:30 p.m. they arrived home, put the kids in bed. He thinks Malehya put them to bed. He doesn't know what they were wearing because they were under the covers when he checked on them. Now, it doesn't say when he checked on them, which is strange that that's missing from the summary. He went to bed fairly early and didn't wake up until next morning when it was light. Now, we know that sunrise was around 5:58 a.m. in that area on that day. He remembered receiving an email from the school that Malehya had marked them absent around 6:18, and that between 12:40 and 1:40, Malehya had to get her bloods done, likely before they went to Truro. He's not sure if they went to town Wednesday or not. Then he talks about Friday. Says that he was in the bedroom with Malehya and Meadow, who were in the bed with him. So he doesn't talk about the children waking Meadow up, Malehya bringing Meadow into the bed. So whether he didn't wake up at that time, whether this is all fabricated, who knows? But he doesn't talk about that. Lilly came in a couple of times, but he didn't check his phone to see the time. The TV was on. We know that Malehya says that she put the TV on, and it was daylight outside. So on the May the 1st, which is the Friday, which is God, I can't speak, which was the Thursday, sunrise was at 5:58 and sunset was at 20:17, so 8:17 p.m. On May the 2nd, sunrise was at 5:56 and sunset was at 20:18, so 8:18. So he's saying it was daylight outside, so it's sometime after 5:56. But that's as close as he can narrow it down to. Now, my experience of what I do and what I've seen other people do is when you wake up, each time you check your phone, see what time it is, usually to think, do we need to go? Yeah, or can I go back to bed and go back to sleep and have a bit longer? But it's a natural reaction to check the time. It's a very unusual way to live if you simply don't have any awareness of what time of day it is at any given point. And the fact that for some things he is so precise, that makes me think that he is being vague on purpose. Why would you be vague on purpose? Because you don't want to delve into the detail because it's not true, generally. He says that Lilly didn't speak. She just opened the door, looked in, and then left. And she did that 2 to 3 times. Now, why might she have done that? Probably because it was morning and she wanted a breakfast and she was a bit peckish, maybe. And he says that they used to remind her not to rush into the room because they wanted to make sure that Meadow got good sleep. Now, I completely understand that. That makes sense. But usually children will make the reason that they're coming in known one way or another. Sometimes the kids would wake Meadow up. And then he jumps to, he got up, no time being noted, and he didn't hear the kids. He thought it was only a few minutes since Lilly had popped her head in. If you're dozing in and out of sleep, though, you've got no idea how long time has gone by. I often think I've dozed back off for 10 minutes and it's actually been half an hour, sometimes longer. Both he and Malehya got up together and were both looking for the children. Now, later, he has basically said Malehya didn't lift a finger to look for them. She just stood there with Meadow on a hip, on a phone. They went out and saw that the back sliding door was closed, and the kids don't usually close it when they go outside. He noticed that the boots were gone. He ran around the house looking for them. He ran, but they weren't there. And then he ran outside, but they weren't in the yard and he couldn't see them. Got in his car, drove around, then ran around in the woods looking for them. It does not say he went up to the cabins, then came back and got in the car and went looking. It doesn't say that he went up to the top road and back round and then went out in the car. None of that. So again, this sequence of events around the search isn't accurate. He says that he searched for hours and that he did not look at the time and didn't even take his phone. To me, just from a personal perspective, it makes little sense to go out searching for missing children and not take your phone, because you would want to be able to contact other people in the household if A, you find them or find something, or B, they find them or they return home. Now, of course, if you know that you're not going to find them because you know fine well what's happened, it doesn't matter whether you've got your phone or not, because you're not going to need to contact the other people in the house. Then there's a general section, and he says that they moved to his mother's house and she moved into the camper. But his uncle, which is Ron Mackenzie, and his father, which is Earl Martell, live down the road. He's got a good relationship with his family. That Lilly and Jack were sheltered, but they were always watched outside, including by Janie. And he goes on to say his mother would always tell him if they didn't have their coats and boots on. Now, if they were always watched, how would they not know in the first place that they didn't have their coats and boots on? And if she was the one watching them, she would simply tell them to put them back on. Realistically, the fact that Janie had to tell them that they were outside and they didn't have the coats or boots on means that they weren't always watched. Now, Janie goes on to say that kids often went outside and she had to ring Malehya to say the kids are outside. Malehya also acknowledges that she usually gets a call from Janie to say kids are outside, but on that morning she didn't. So this idea that they are helicopter parents who watch the kids all the time is an absolute farce. They clearly weren't. In terms of discipline, Daniel says that he just talks to the children and tells them why they could not do things. They didn't listen to Malehya, they only listened to him, and that he did not physically discipline the children, or they did not physically discipline the children, so either of them. Janie also made a statement on day one. What are we up to time-wise? We've already been going for an hour, so I'll finish day one and then we'll move on next time. Janie's statement on day one says that she'd seen Jack and Lily all week, and then on Friday at 6 a.m. she got up, she had tea and cigarettes. 7 a.m. she fed the chickens and let the dog out. She went back inside and played on her phone. She then learned the children were missing, and then she got a call at 8:48 a.m. from her brother Ron. We know that that changes later, and that she says that she got the call from Ron, then went back to sleep. Then she heard the children playing outside. Then she found out that they were missing because she heard Daniel. So her statement at the beginning is not the same as the statement that she later gives, or the information she gave in her TV interview. Brian Ward, the school bus driver, also gave a statement on day one. He says that Lily and Jack were at school on Tuesday. Daniel took them off the bus at 2:42 p.m. There was no school on Wednesday and the children were not in school on Thursday and Friday, and he didn't notice any issues when he last saw the children. They say that they did a sweep for the children of the trailer and a sweep by the ground search and rescue the children of Janie's campus. So I apologise. They did do those things, a sweep for the children, but it describes it as such. It doesn't say they did a forensic search of the property for any evidence relating to the disappearance of the children. They were looking for the kids because they were working on the assumption that the children walked away. At 4 p.m. on the 2nd of May, and we know that that's the time because it's defined in the court documents at page 29, Hayden, Hayley, and Hayden's girlfriend find a section of pink blanket. It was 1 kilometre exactly from the home, and it was on Lansdowne Station Road. Now, the police court documents specifically say Lansdowne Station Road at the junction with the pipeline trail, and we know that Janie has made much of this and said that it was Lansdowne Road, not Lansdowne Station Road. They're clear, Lansdowne Station Road. Janie wasn't there at the time. The RCMP are the ones that went and met the family members. The dispatch audio also references Lansdowne Station Road, so we know that that is where it was. They took a photograph, family members, came down and got the RCMP officers who accompanied them back to the scene. They called a K9 officer and Corporal Martin to the area, who carried out a search of that particular area and along the pipeline trail, about 1 kilometre around the blanket. No scent was found by the canine officer. If the children had been there and deposited the blanket, they would have picked up the scent. The item was seized by Corporal Martin, the canine handler. I believe from the audio that other people had already been in that area and didn't see this. But they saw a gold star sticker, a tiny gold star, and other bits of cloth and clothing. So the fact that the family found it there at 4 p.m. is quite bizarre. And it takes me down the road of, well, did they put it there and then find it? Malehya was obviously aware of it being in the trash from her statement. And this limits the probative value of this piece of evidence because certainly the rest of it was in the trash. So there's a fair chance the piece that was found there was also in the trash, or it may not have been. But it doesn't scream the kids dropped it. Also, it was quite high up in the tree, considering the ages of Jack and Lily. That's everything for day one. So day one obviously was the biggest, most important day of the investigation. So hence it's taken quite a while to go through. I'll leave it there for now. We'll come back to this in the next video, start from the 3rd of May, then the days and what happened, as you can see here, are much shorter. So we'll get through many more days on each video. Thank you for spending time with me. I will give you an update. I start my new role tomorrow, so I'm unlikely to be doing anything then. In terms of YouTube content, and also after the complete disaster that was our attempt to rescue Effie, we made the decision, very spur of the moment, that we would get a puppy. And so we welcome Howl from Howl's Magical Castle to the family. He is 8 weeks old and he is a Lakeland Terrier crossed with a Boston Terrier. Most bizarre thing I've ever heard of, but he's very cute. 1, 2, 3. Say, hiya, Howl. Oh, you tired boy. I tired Papa. Say hi, everybody. I'm the new office junior. I'm very good at shredding things. Yeah, I'm a baby velociraptor. Yay! So it just remains for me to say, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll see you next time.